Great. Well, welcome everyone and good morning. I'm Linda Knowlton, the immediate past president for FAMP and also the education chair. And as being the chair of this committee, I have the honor to work with individuals such as Dion Bass and collaborating with her for today's webinar. So I first want to welcome you all. This is a coffee talk with the underwriter. We may have, where we're hoping that this is going to be a multiple of series, and that we have an open forum of questions and answers and some great information that Dion has put together for us today. So before we get started, a couple things. As we're going through the slides, if you have questions on that, just post them in the chat box and we will answer those questions as we're going through the slides. But we will also at the end, permitting that we have time, at the end of our webinar towards 11 o'clock, if there are any questions, we will open up the mics and let people ask questions as well. So if you have something that you want to ask that may not quite be on topic today, we will hopefully have an opportunity to do this. So as I said, this is our first series of Coffee Talk with the Underwriter. So I'd love if anyone, if you're not on camera and you have a coffee mug, since and Dion, where's your mug? Let everyone hold up their coffee mug. And this is our first of many series. There we go.
Everybody can turn their cameras on for a second to show their mugs.
Yes, because we want to take a snapshot if you have a mug. So, but we appreciate that. I have my Christmas mug, my buddy mug that is near and dear to me, and enjoying my coffee this morning. So yay, thank you everyone. So again, we're going to get this started. And I'm going to say a few words about Dion. Dion and I have been chatting for a few months and working together on hopefully various projects here at the FAMP. But Dion has had 25 years of mortgage banking and lending experience. She has worked as a contract underwriter for 3 major insurance companies, as well as underwritten for several major lending institutions. She has also written and performed seminars and workshops for various mortgage brokers over the 18 years. During her time at different underwriting assignments, she found herself most of the day on the phone with mortgage brokers, helping them restructure their files, explaining mortgage process and underwriting. And that is exactly why we have her here today for us. So I would love to introduce Ms. Dion Bass.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am so supercalifragilistic, happy to be here. I am a Association of Mortgage Professionals fan to the 10th power. Because I've been in the industry for so long, I've been following all the different organizations. I've seen people speak, and to actually be someone who's speaking at an event, you have no idea what an honor it is for me. So Linda, thank you guys so much. I so appreciate you guys for letting me be heard, letting me share my life, my experience with you guys. This is, as she said, Coffee Talk with an Underwriter. We can move on to the next slide. So I'll put this quote up here, just kind of as an introduction for me to explain to you one important thing. There's not an underwriter on this planet that knows everything. We are constantly learning. We are constantly taking classes. We're constantly taking workshops. Guidelines are constantly changing. And so this spoke volumes to me, because we're constantly learning at all times. So one of the things that I just want to say to you guys is give them a break. A lot of information we have to cram into our heads, and sometimes we might miss something or drop the ball. We can move on to the next slide. So I'm gonna make this extremely quick. This is just kind of an introduction as to basically what qualifies me to teach you guys, to talk to you guys. And I started from the bottom and I worked my way up. I was a marketing manager. I was a processor. I owned a processing company. I was a processing manager. During all this time, I was teaching other people because it's just inside of me. I am a helpaholic, or as they call me at church, a volunteeraholic, always helping, always helping. And I definitely sympathize with the originator and the processor. The originator, because they are 100% on commission, and the processor because everything gets dumped on the processor. We can move on to the next slide. And so that brings me to what my why is. And I have basically got it down to 3 words because I talk a lot. And so I develop, encourage, and equip. So important. And the reason why it's so important, that middle one, encourage, is because we all know that when something bad happens, when a draw is blocked, everybody attacks. Whereas me, I encourage. And the reason being is because someone encouraged me once. And I just want to keep passing that along. So my why, I develop, I encourage, and I equip. We can move on to the next slide. So we're going to talk about 3 things today. 3 subjects, pardon me. We want to talk about some of the things that have to do with credit that could possibly delay your loan. We want to talk about just different income issues that could arise. We want to talk about how to document certain assets. And we're going to go over a couple of things that have to do with the appraisal and the purchase contract. This is not all inclusive. I don't know, we're not going to be able to go over everything, but we're going to do our best to try and hit some of those hot spots. So this material is for informational purposes only, and you cannot take me to court. I'm just joking. It says you should not be relied upon for legal or compliance advice. This information doesn't really represent, lender overlays and lenders culture. I'm just kind of giving you the meats and the stuff that, Fannie and Freddie are kind of looking at. And it kind of gives you something to, I hate to use the word fight with. I'll say go to battle with. I guess that still is fighting, isn't it? All right, we'll go on to the next slide. Let's start with credit. I'm ready for my next slide. So this might not look like a big deal to you, but let me tell you something. This right here is so important. The housing history needs to be current at time of application. So what does that mean? That means that when that file comes to the underwriter needs to be able to look at that credit report and see that if today is December, that the last payment was made was November. I didn't put any arrows or anything on this, but if you guys would just follow me with your eyes to where it says ATU mortgage, and then we're going to go to the right, and you're going to look at DLA, date last active. That's going to be one of your best friends. If you go over one more time, you'll see ECOA. If you go up now, you see reported. That's telling you when it was reported. So when it was reported to the credit reporting agency, when was the last time this information was updated? So in this particular case, the last time that this account was active was in September. But if we're in December, that means that we're missing a couple of months. So I showed this example because sometimes the eye sees what it wants to see. And you would look at that 11/22, so November 2022, and you would keep moving. But we can't, because the date last active is from September. And we need to know what happened in October, and we need to know what happened in November. So housing history needs to be the most recent activity. And this goes for all properties, not just the borrower's primary residence or the property that they're currently refinancing or purchasing right now, for all properties owned. I'm ready for that next slide now. Address discrepancies. So, when the underwriter comes back and they ask you for about 5,632 letters of explanations, they are not doing that because they like to see the borrower right. That is a common red flag. And when I use the word red flag, I mean, that right there is something that makes me stop, that makes Fannie and Freddie stop, that makes investors stop and say, wait a second. Why were they living at 123 Sesame Street, Newark, New Jersey, April of 2017, that's that little box that I highlighted for you guys, when the address above that says that they were living at 175 13th Street, Ant Hill, Missouri. So immediately we start to dig. Immediately we start to, okay, so what's going on? Is this going to be an occupancy issue? Do they live here and they're trying to act like they don't live here? Is this a property that they didn't disclose? And so address discrepancies should be addressed when you submit the loan. I say that because you don't want us to dig. And what I'm finding is that a long time ago, this was not really an issue with borrowers, but you have to think about technology today. They have so much information. All they have to do is speak into their phone and they can find out whatever they want to find out. So borrowers are a lot more savvier than they were when I started 20 something years ago. Let's move on to the next slide. So we're going to continue with address discrepancies. So what ends up happening when we have an address discrepancy? What ends up happening when we have an address discrepancy that ends up being an undisclosed property? Okay, now we have additional debt. Now I need the homeowner's insurance. Now I need the tax cert. I need the mortgage statement. I need the homeowner's association fees. These are things that will affect the credit decision. It's going to raise my DTI, or it could even, I'm sorry to say this, reveal something that the borrower didn't want us to reveal. Occupancy is a huge issue. You really would not believe how many borrowers are stating that they live somewhere when they really don't. Let's move on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about something that no one ever talks about. It's almost like a pink elephant in the industry. A fraud report is pulled on every single loan in the industry, and that is being sold to an agency. So Fannie, Freddie, USDA, VA, government, a fraud report is being pulled. And so this becomes an issue because companies that do stuff like credit repair, borrowers who do their own quote unquote credit repair or do stuff to move stuff off that credit report, it comes up on this fraud report. And so I don't want to, we never want to discourage anybody from filling out an application. But once that application has been completed, we do want to have those real conversations. Listen, have you ever been a part of any type of credit repair? Because it's going to come out. It's going to come out. You got to think about it like this. If everybody is pulling fraud reports, so if Rocket Mortgage, if UWM, if Navy Federal, if all these companies are pulling these fraud reports, they're all putting their information inside the system. These fraud report companies have so much information on borrowers, and all of that just coming from applications being pulled in those fraud reports. So all that information is out there, and we need to educate the borrower, let them know there are just certain things we cannot hide. It's going to come back and bite us. We're going to open up a can of worms, and they're not going to be edible.
Dion, I have a question here too. Do you mind if I, exactly what you're speaking about, is doing credit repair a bad thing? We have two questions.
Credit repair. So that's a good question. And so this answer is my opinion, just Dion Bass's opinion. I don't believe that credit repair is a bad thing. I don't. And one of the main reasons why I don't believe credit repair is a bad thing is because I have been in the industry for so long that I used to underwrite subprime loans. And when we underwrote subprime loans, these borrowers paid their mortgages. The problem is not, can they pay their mortgage? They're paying rent. The problem is, can they afford the mortgage that they're paying? So no, I don't believe credit repair is a bad thing, but we can't use credit repair to circumvent guidelines. And that's my issue with credit repair. Telling somebody that they can remove a bankruptcy or that they can remove a foreclosure or something, and that timeline doesn't fit in the guidelines, you're taking money from them because it's going to get caught. It's going to come up.
So you're saying that if speaking specifically of fraud, if the borrower's been involved in credit repair and was told that would be removed, you're referring to that as being fraudulent.
Not fraudulent. It's going to appear on the fraud report. Okay, first of all, yes, you just brought up a very good point, because they put no on that application that they haven't had a bankruptcy or a foreclosure in the last 7 years. So yes, but I just want to say that it's going to come up on that fraud report. Everybody pulls fraud reports, whether a different company, and there's nothing I could show you guys because the fraud reports are not online. You could imagine that there's no examples of those anywhere, but it is going to come up. It's a public record. So that fraud report, so that fraud company is pulling it. So if they're trying to remove it, then make sure it's within that time frame, because there's nothing worse. And this is going to sound bad, and hopefully there's no underwriters on the line. There is nothing worse than an underwriter underwriting a loan, missing something on a fraud report, and it being caught in QC, and now you can't close it all.
Right.
So protect yourself.
There was a comment that real credit help is one thing, but credit repair companies seldom offer anything of real value other than sending out dispute letters, which the borrower can do. So
that was perfect. That was a great way. That was a great way of what I was trying to say. I might have to steal that from you.
Well, that's Eddie. We'll talk to Eddie. I'm sure he'll be okay with that.
Okay. All right, we could go to the next slide. I'm sorry, income issues that could arise and how to combat them. So once again, I want to tell you guys that we don't have a lot of time. So this is not 1,000 million different income things, just a couple to kind of like wet your whistle. Okay, we can go ahead to the next slide now. All right, this right here is so huge. And one of the main reasons why it's so huge is because when you think about it from a self-employed borrower's standpoint, they pay someone to do their taxes. So in their mind, they're like, look, I gave you what I have. It's not my job to analyze them too. You analyze them. So a lot of times they don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what's missing. They don't know what we need or we don't need. But all pages of the tax returns are needed for personal and for business. And what I found is the parts of the tax returns that are usually missing is the one thing that could possibly help them. And it's that the part that has all the statements on it. So statement 1, and then statement 2, and then statement 3. And what you'll find on some of those is amortization, which you can add back. So that'll give them more income. So, work with them on all of the pages and all of the schedules of the tax returns. I want to give a shameless plug for anybody who goes to visit Chicago. The Black Ensemble Theater is actually a real place. It's my cousin's theater. You guys will love it. We can move on to the next slide. Oh, this little box used to be the bane of my existence. When I was a processor, I was one of those processors that actually calculated income. But you can imagine that when you're a processor, you're dealing with a lot of paperwork. And what used to always get me was that little box. And it's so tiny and it's so small that unless you're looking for it, you're not really paying attention to it. And this is really becoming an issue that I'm seeing now, as far as like, now that COVID's over. Why do I say that? Think about how much overtime and bonus and all this stuff that people were making during COVID. Money was flying everywhere. People were working overtime. They were working, they were earning a lot of bonuses, earning a lot of commissions. And so now that that's over with, I see this tapering down a great deal. And so when you're dealing with your overtime and your bonus, and you want to actually use it as qualifying income, either not applicable where they just kind of like mark it off, which is, I love when I see that, because then I don't have to worry about it. I can't make someone answer a question. Or I'm looking for that yes. Is it likely to continue? They're not saying, do you promise? It's not a pinky promise. It is just, is it likely? Is the opportunity available for them to continue to make overtime or continue to make bonus? And I need that yes, or that, cross out or whatever have you, if I'm going to use that income, overtime and bonus, as qualifying income. Go to the next slide for me. I can't remember if I did something or not. Okay, I'm glad that I didn't start talking about it. I did do it here. Okay, so here's another issue. Lower year-to-date earnings. Okay, so I did my best to kind of make this one right here a good example, but if I added it wrong, don't judge me. So what ends up happening when we are calculating income, and this is a huge deal, what ends up happening when we're calculating income is we'll get to the part where we're say, okay, the base income is this much, and then we'll make sure that the year-to-date earnings support that base income. Okay, and so what we do is, an underwriter like me, I'm always looking for a one-off. I'm always looking for a reason where I can use the base income, even though the year-to-date does not support it. And so if you're calculating your income, which you should be before you send that off to that underwriter, and you see that year-to-date is a little bit lower, get a detailed explanation. Find out what's going on, so that when you send this loan, you already have your argument, you already have your explanation as to why you should still be able to use the base income. One thing about the guidelines that we must always remember is that they're a guide for us. It is the underwriter's discretion, and you have to help them with that discretion. You have to help them with that decision. I'm done with that slide. You can move on to the next one. Ooh, we're going on to assets, documenting assets correctly. I'll go to the next slide on this one. So this is an odd one. And the reason why I brought this up is because I have gone back and forth. And when I use the word back and forth, I never mean argue. Back and forth in the sense that I have to keep sending that condition back, because it's not being met. And so one of the things that happens is you have borrowers that will sell a personal item. And that seems to be a really big deal now because of all the different electronics that people have. I've seen scooters. I've seen those things that I was about to call it a water scooter. I don't know what you call it, a jet ski. I see that a lot. I see people selling their phones and things like that. And while that is a valid sale, you can use that, to help you with your down payment or your earnest money deposit. Well, the problem is always documenting that. And so there are 4 things that we're looking for. So we're going to start at the top left one, and that's the borrower's ownership of the asset. So remember what I said about guidelines? So if someone sold $1,200 worth of clothing, you can imagine that we're not really probably going to have the receipts from some $200 jeans that someone bought a long time ago. A really good explanation should suffice that you own those jeans and then you sold them. But when we're dealing with something like a mobile phone, which you probably have a warranty on, or your the title to your jet ski or your car or expensive bike or whatever have you, we're going to show the underwriter or the investor that, hey, I actually did own this thing. We're going to go to the right now, the top right, value of the asset. This is kind of an easy one. I kind of used the camera, thinking about an appraiser, how they take pictures. So you would be able to search the internet for that. I've seen people go to eBay. I've seen people go to Amazon and just kind of provide me with documentation to show This is what this thing is selling for on the quote unquote owner market. So the third thing that you need, that's going to be the second one down on the left, the transfer of ownership of that asset. That's where those two people are shaking hands. Imagine them exchanging the ownership right there in that handshake. And so what's happening right here is we're going to use either a bill of sale or a statement from the seller saying, hey, I purchased this from this person for XYZ. They both can sign it, however you want to go. And the last one, which is the one on the right, at the very bottom, the receipt of assets, which looks like a pile of money. This right here is usually when I'm asking this question about where this money came from. It'll be a large deposit and someone say, oh, I sold something. So we're looking for them to have deposited that money, for that money to have been transferred, Zelle, Cash App, or whatever have you. I mean, stuff has changed so much nowadays. You would be surprised at some of the stuff that I look at. So that's how you properly document when you are using assets of something that you sold. We can move on to the next slide. Gift funds, hot topic. We're just talking about gift funds on the conventional side right here, but still, this is still a hot topic. And the reason why I say that is because even though the conventional side is a little bit easier than the government, people are still struggling with providing the correct documentation. And so the first thing is you can use a copy of the donor's check, and then you can use the borrower's deposit slip, that person depositing that into their bank account. So those two items right there, along with the gift letter. Oh, I didn't put a gift letter up there. So a gift letter will show you that you're documenting that gift fund. And this is prior to settlement. Okay, we haven't talked about at settlement yet. We're talking about prior to settlement. The second example. Now we're talking about a donor's withdrawal slip. So they're going to the bank or they're going to the ATM and they're withdrawing this money and they're showing you that this money has been withdrawn from somewhere. And then we're back to that borrower's deposit slip. And then there's the borrower depositing that. I believe that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac's lingo is a little bit dated, because I know that a lot of stuff, I mean, when I get a check now, I take a picture of it and I just deposit it on my phone. We will accept stuff like that too. So don't get caught up in what they're calling it. We just talking about a record of it being deposited. And then here we go, electronic transfer of funds from donor account to the borrowers or the closing agent. And so here where you usually see this with a wire or with some of the other ways that you can actually send money to people. A lot of times the donor will just send that money straight to the settlement agent, and that's fine too. And that might be a wire letter, that might be receipt from their what do you call it, from their bank statement or something, just something showing that that money left that account and went straight there. Because remember, we're going to have that gift letter that I did not put an image of up there showing that this is the money I gave them. It came from me and it came from this account. Next slide. So what happens when that gift money is given at settlement? So that means that everything has happened. The loan has been processed, underwritten, cleared to close. We're ready to go. What happens then? So now, before they send those funds out, meaning whoever that investor is, or if you send the funds out yourself, you're going to get a copy of that check from the settlement agent. So that little check right there is a check, and then that person is the settlement agent that little arrow is pointing to. And that settlement agent will definitely give it to you so that you can document your file. Or the settlement agent is going to show that money was wired to them. But whatever the case may be, these are different ways that you can get those funds documented for a gift. We can move on to the next slide. I talked a little bit about this on on a video that I did before. And so I'll make this one quick. So the verification of earnest money deposit has always kind of been a hot topic with underwriters. And for me, I believe it's the reason how it is worded kind of throughout the guidelines. And that term, if the earnest money is used to meet the borrower's minimum required investment. Well, as you know, with a primary purchase, there is no minimum required investment. It's a primary purchase. But here's the thing, what we're trying to establish as underwriters is, did this money come from the borrower? What we're trying to make sure of is, did they incur any debt? Like, are they going to have to pay this money back? So we're trying to document this and make sure that this money actually came from the borrower. When does this come up? Because this doesn't always come up. It comes up when I have a borrower who has bank statements that might have $2,500 in it and has had $2,500 in it for the past like 2 months. You know, there's money going in, but there's never much over $2,500 that actually stays in that account. But I got a $10,000 or $15,000 earnest money check. Or I have bank statements that are different from the earnest money deposit check that I have. I see that a lot. People have multiple accounts. So that's what we're asking. We're trying to figure out, did that money actually come from the borrower? You can go to the next slide and then skip that slide. All right. Oh, we're almost done. Yeah. Collateral, appraisal, and purchase contract issues. Next slide. So for any of my realtor people on here, this right here is this is the nightmare. This is the nightmare. Let me tell you why it's the nightmare. Because there is nothing worse for an underwriter to have cleared a loan to close, and the loan goes to QC, and we're going to talk about QC in a little while. And the loan goes to QC, and then QC comes back and says that they're missing like 2 or 3 addendums. And then this is where, of course, the real estate agent is like, you've had this loan all this time. So one of the things that I challenge you guys to do is to just make sure that you or your processors always make sure that before you send that contract in, that you have everything, because nobody wants to request information or go back to the agent after you've already told them that the loan is clear or that we're kind of at the finish line. So all the addendums at all times. We can move on to the next. Now, the purchase price and seller concessions match. What do I mean by this? It used to happen a lot last year. I haven't seen as many this year, and I'll let you guys kind of discuss that amongst yourselves. But there was a lot of changes going on with purchase contracts, a lot of changes. Purchase prices going up and then coming down because the property value didn't support it. Then I'm going back up because the seller was like, absolutely not. I still want this price. Concessions being negotiated. Excuse me. The seller pay closing costs being renegotiated. And so what ends up happening is, while all this is going on, nobody is updating the appraisal. And so they're not matching. So one of the things that you always want to make sure of is that whenever there's a change to that purchase contract, that you're letting that AMC, what's it called, appraisal management company, know that there's been an update, and let the appraiser see whatever that updated contract is. Because remember, the appraiser has acknowledged that they have reviewed the contract and all, the addendums that go along with it. We can move on to the next slide. All right. So this, I usually find that this kind of is a big deal. I believe, what is it called that people are doing now? Is it called wholesaling or something like that, where you kind of see this a lot, where it's wholesaling? And so what ends up happening is the seller that's listed on the purchase contract doesn't match the owner of record on the appraisal report. Sometimes the appraiser may catch it, sometimes they may not. I mean, they're just trying to get that appraisal out to you guys. And so it's just a quick glance. It's just, one of the things that we're definitely looking for when that appraisal report comes in. Does that owner record match what's on that title commitment and what matches what's on that purchase contract? We can move on to the next slide. Cool, this is so huge. So HOA fees. So what ends up happening with the HOA fees that I see is, and I don't know what you think, Linda, but you'll see HOA fees on the purchase contract, and then you'll see different HOA fees on the appraisal report. And if the last person that saw whatever document is going to put that inside the file for whatever qualifying purposes, whether it's DU, whether it's your Encompass or whatever have you. And so sometimes that can make or break a deal. Sometimes that could put you over 45%. I don't know how rates go, but I know it's a huge deal. I had a situation once where there's a certain variance that you have with your underwriting findings, with your AUS, with your DU, whatever have you. And so what happened was they were adamant about me lowering the DTI like 1%. It's like the end of the month, it's super busy, and they want us to go back in and redo this, and it made no sense. But that $100 or that $75, it could make a difference in your loan. So definitely pay close attention. Me personally, the reason why I usually go with the purchase contract is because the real estate agent is in contact with the HOA, and the appraiser is supposed to be, but sometimes the appraiser will get that information off of public records or something like that. I am ready for the next slide. All right. So I'm very big on this, and I think it might be because I spent some time at Wells Fargo. If you don't tell me the story, I cannot help you document it. I can't help you document it. And for me, that's why it's huge if you're in retail to have a really good either underwrite manager or team lead, someone that you can run stuff through, someone that can help you, structure, or on the wholesale, if you're sitting your loans on the wholesale side, to have a great account executive to help you so that you're not throwing this loan inside underwriting and then just completely ruining the chances of the borrower being approved because it was structured wrong. So always get your borrower's story. That year to date on that pay stub, huge, absolutely huge. Find out so that you can go ahead and combat that before you send it to underwriting. I'm ready for the next slide. And so that right there is my website, asktheunderwriter.net. If you know 25 to 30 people who still need their continuing education, please reach out. I am still doing classes until the end of the year. And I'm ready for the next slide. And I'm done. Linda, we did it.
Wow, we did it. I have to share with everyone that early this morning, I received an email from Dion that her Xfinity, I think was down yesterday, today. So she's doing this all by her phone, by the way. Courtney's her Vanna White as far as sending over the slides. So we're going to let's open this up for questions. And if the biggest question that's been coming in, Dion, and I've answered this, that this is recorded, we will be sending out that. And and it's okay to send out your PowerPoint as well to all the participants?
I would say that like maybe in like a PDF.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny that you said that, Linda, because I thought about putting these points in kind of like a worksheet, but I didn't want to do too much. And so that's a good point for next time.
It was a perfect presentation. So if anyone would like to ask a question, you can go ahead in the chat box, or you can open up your screen and raise your hands. But I did have a question, maybe to start it off, and going back to the appraisal section, when you were pointing out the seller of record, there also there's always that box there of checking for that is owner, vacant, or tenant. And is that something that obviously underwriters look for and need further explanation, especially if you have an owner occupied loan and there's a tenant in there? So would you mind elaborating on that?
I would definitely say yes. And I really meant what I said when I said that borrowers are more savvy than they were 10 to 15 years ago. You would really be surprised at how many, because I know a lot of originators, okay? And these are honest people. You would be amazed at how many borrowers are basically not being completely honest. So that's the first thing that we look at, because why? That's proven our occupancy. The appraiser, he's my eyes for that subject. And it's a good point that you brought up the appraiser. I didn't really want to go too deep as far as how we actually review the appraisal, Linda. But that's another reason why we ask so many questions, because the appraiser is supposed to be our eyes and ears. And sometimes they don't take clear pictures. Or they're not addressing stuff that they know that they should address. And we're supposed to be working together. Right. So definitely, you see that a lot, Linda, when you're dealing with primary, when you're dealing with primary cash out refinances. You will, what do you call it? You'll, I'm sorry, not primary. Is it? Yeah, primary cash out refinances. They'll come back and it'll be tenant occupied. Why?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They want the lowest rate. They want the lowest rate.
Yeah, people can be sneaky for sure. So we do not have any questions yet, but I'm going to keep this rolling. I cannot believe we have such a quiet crowd here on a Friday. So they obviously need more coffee. But I had a question. I'll go back to the credit if I may. As far as we briefly talked about disputes. So we all know what disputes are and so forth. How does an underwriter look at disputes and further document those?
So disputes. So this is what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are looking for with disputes. They're trying to see if it has a negative effect on the what did you call it? On the decision. Because what's happening now, everything is so automated. Fannie Mae is actually reading the credit report and telling you that you don't have to worry about disputes, because disputes used to be a really big deal. It definitely is a big deal on the government side. I can't remember the exact guidelines exactly, but government wise, definitely a big deal. So not as much as a big deal on the conventional side, because if it gets through and it's a zero balance, they're looking for stuff like that, then you're fine. Okay. I'm sorry. There's so much stuff
okay.
in front of me.
Take a swig of your coffee. There you go. All right, we have a few questions. I had some victims here, and we appreciate everyone asking questions here. All right, first question is, how should I calculate overtime to be able to calculate it in income?
So Fannie Mae is looking for, I always say Fannie Mae. I don't know why we just treat Freddie Mac like he's just not important. He's important too.
Very important.
Fannie and Freddie look at overtime as variable income, which means that we need a record of these earnings. And so when you're looking at overtime, they want to see that the borrower has at least 12 months, a 12-month history of this income. So say, for instance, you've got some overtime that was listed in we're already in 2022 and we're at the end of the year. Say, for instance, we were in February, and then we had some overtime that was in that previous year. You can use that income. See, there was a time when you couldn't use that income at all. Now we can use that income. So we're looking for a history of it. And what you want to play on is that 12 months and the likely to continue, which is why that button is so huge. I said button, but you know I mean box.
Box, right.
Someone actually just sent me an email right before I got on this call asking me for the income calculation worksheet that I use. Maybe that could be the next one that we do, kind of talk about the different income calculations.
Oh,
So I'm
that'd be
not sure if
great.
I answered your question, but what we're looking for is a history. If they only earned it for this year, like it's December 9th right now. If they had at least a month of that overtime, an argument could be made. An argument could be made. And I wish I could show you the guidelines right now, but I'm on my phone to kind of tell you where and how that could be addressed.
We'll definitely we already have our next series of our coffee talk with the underwriter, so we're good. All right, we've got some more questions. I'm so excited. Is it true that accounts with disputes do not count in the credit score calculation?
That kind of is true, because if you think about it like this, if Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac have accepted that account that's in dispute, it has to meet a couple of different things. It has to have a zero balance, or it has to be in good standing. So it's not affecting it in a negative way. And if it has a zero balance, it doesn't really have any bearing on it.
Okay. All right. Good answer. All right. Next question. How do you overcome the 3204 code in DU?
The 3204, good gosh. And DU, give me some more information. What is the 3204 code? Is that like is that an AUS thing?
Sam, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, so the 3204 code, Fannie or Freddie don't even know what it is. So you can have a borrower that meets the income requirements and guidelines, but there's something within their profile that triggers this 3204 code, and there is no guidance within the guidelines to clear this item up. And we particularly see this happen a lot with African-American borrowers. And it's something that we have been advocating to help us correct this process, but I wanted to see if you, as an underwriter, has seen this and figured out a solution to this challenge.
When you're running that and you receive that error, how are the assets?
So the assets are strong, the income is strong. So example that I have most recently, I have a borrower that was employee for UPS for more than 30 years, has more than $500,000 in his retirement account. His income was over 120,000. There was nothing to trigger that I could see from doing the file that should trigger this. But there is something within the profile that Fannie doesn't even know. And it's something that I think that we're gonna probably see more of. And it's probably something as an organization we should try to get ahead and understand. And if there's any underwriters that come across this, it needs to be tackled, because the people at Fannie Mae, I was on support for more than 2 hours, they didn't even know what it was. So they refer you to the lender, and the lender has the authority to override this 3204 code. But they're concerned about if I do this, will I be able to sell my paper on the secondary market? So most lenders are not overriding that 3204 code, and there is no explanation of why the borrowers are receiving this. And we've had 5 files this year with the 3204 code, and all of the borrowers were African-American.
Well, maybe Dion, you can check that out. So when we do our next series with credit, maybe we can collectively do some investigating on that. Would that work?
I would like to know that. I want to I think I know the voice after you started talking. I know the voice. I would like to talk offline, because they're not going to override that, because it's going to destroy their reps and warrants. No, they're going to be online for that loan. So I would love to talk to you offline about that, Sam.
Why don't you
Alright.
guys do that and then get back with us so we can hopefully pass on that information and appreciate the information and the question, Sam. We just have about less than 10 minutes, so I've got a few more questions. Dion, do you mind if I shoot them at you?
Sure.
Okay. You make that note and then what? Okay, here's
I
another one.
am.
If we
I'm sorry. I was writing that down.
That's okay. If we see in the process discrepancy in the occupancy, should we report it to FIN/CIN or how should we proceed? So if there's an occupancy discrepancy, how should that be handled?
Most lenders are going to counter offer it. I mean, if to I don't necessarily know if anybody is going to prosecute someone for lying on their application and never went anywhere.
Mhm.
But most lenders are just going to counter offer it. That's what we used to see. Now, back in the day, that was an automatic denial.
Right,
But
exactly.
today, this day and age, they push everything through.
Yeah,
But
second chance.
yeah, there is no specific procedure that goes with that. You just have to make a decision on if you're going to move forward with that borrower, you know what I mean? And you are within every right to say, okay, no, I can't do this or do business with you because, it was unethical.
Right, exactly. All right. Here's another question. Gift funds. You receive a wire receipt from title showing donor bank account transfer to title company. I guess is that acceptable for gift funds?
Yes.
Okay.
That was.
Okay. And we average out monthly income. I think this goes back to the overtime.
Say that one more time, Linda.
Is it just this is, I think, a follow-up question to the one about the income a few moments ago. And we averaged it out monthly. So when you're calculating the overtime income or all the income, it's
So
averaged out monthly.
You're going to average year to date plus the previous year.
Okay.
Unless
Okay.
it's declining. If it's declining, of course, you can't.
Right. All right. And let's move on to, I have a loan that has a balloon payment due May 1st. Want to refi my client out of the balloon and found out the title wasn't recorded. It's still in the seller's name. The loan was funded in August 2021. If we fix the title, what other documentation will be needed from your perspective, Dion?
So the borrower purchased this house?
Purchase.
Yes.
Well, yes. Okay, Nicole.
In
Purchase-
August August of 2021, and the balloon payment is due May of 2022 or 2023. Sorry.
23.
And the
So-
property is, and it was like a regular closing with a closing disclosure and a settlement agent.
So it was a fix and flip hard money loan. So yeah.
Mhm.
Ah. Okay, so it's in the seller's name. So is it going to go into the borrower's name anytime soon?
It should be. It was in a trust that the person bought it from a trust essentially.
Okay,
And it
so
should be in their name.
well, the good part is that whenever you're dealing with a rate and term, there's not really any seasoning requirements.
Okay.
Because they're not getting any cash
Good
back.
point.
They're just paying off whatever that amount is that they had to do. So I
Well,
would definitely.
They wanna actually get cash out and they want to change it to a 30-year fix and make it a rental property.
Probably need to wait that year, right?
6 months.
They've been living in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
but
all
they
goes
don't
back to
own it.
title, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't own it yet, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. How does a car loan showing late but has been paid in full affect the loan? So if there's showing late, maybe less than, let's assume the last 12 months, but it's been paid in full. How does that, I'm not sure how it affects the lender's explanation probably of lates within the last 12 months and potential credit
So
score.
That one is, it really depends on several different things, what the program is, and if you guys went manual underwrite, it was AUS, you know what I mean? So it kind of depends. That one actually depends. I forgot to put all my other information up here, but if you want to send me a message and we can talk about that further, because I don't know if it's actually been run through, DU or LP, or if you're trying to go FHA, VA, or USDA, because you're telling me that it's a zero balance, but I'm not really sure what the other factors are that have to, that go with the
Right.
loan.
Yeah, so it probably depends upon when it was laid as well.
Yes.
So, factors. All right, I think I've got all the questions. We've had comments about, would love to hear an income calculation webinar, so forth. But we would love to hear these, the feedback from all of you, that if you'd like to continue this series, and we would have certain topics. But I will tell you, this has been incredible information, and it's just to gather together and ask those questions that come up that we probably have always run across, or we will at one point in time, if not now, in the future. It's good to share information with fellow loan originators and those of us that are boots on the ground out there working every day. So, Dion,
I do
we
have
will.
one thing. If you
Sure.
guys could please fill out the survey that I'm going to ask the lovely Miss Courtney to please send to everyone, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely, we will do that. That way we know what information we can do next and in the next few series. But again, if you know of anyone that has not completed their CE, have them contact Dion, and we will get out this recording and this PowerPoint to all of you. We thank you for all being here. I know it's a busy time of the year with the holidays and so forth, but we thank you, and thank you for supporting FAMP. Everyone have a great holiday.
Take care.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.